Hi, this is Monica Warren, and you're watching the norming video for third grade writing for CA2. I'm going to walk you through some of the norming process and some of the steps you'll want to take before you start grading your scholars' responses. Whenever you open up the exemplar, you'll find a few different pages there. The first one will say something along the lines of blank sample. This is a sample writing response that the CTL made. The first thing that you'll want to do is read over it very carefully to get a sense of what might a scholar response look and sound like. Once you read through it, that's when you'll want to go and start looking at the rubric to see how might you grade this. So I'm going to flip over now to the rubric. The rubric that you see here is the TA writing rubric for the fourth grade writing star. I think it's important that we start introducing some of the same terminology to our third graders since in one semester they will be held to the same standard for their writing rubric. The writing rubric is divided into three parts. The first one is organization and progression. The second part is development of ideas. And then the third part is use of language/conventions. So when you start up at the top, what you'll see is that in each of the strands, there are indicators. So for organization and progression, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 indicators. On each of the indicators, you'll want to rate your scholars and then get an overall glimpse of where they are for organization and progression. You'll see over here on the left-hand side, I've written out guiding questions for you to help you as you make your decision. For the most part, a 2, 3, and a 4 will be, yes, I see it, it's there, and then it's a matter of to what degree is it done. And then usually a level 1 means that it's not there, it's not evident, it's not coherent, or to the answer to the guiding question is just no. So what you'll ask first is it written as a narrative? So once you read over a scholar response, ask, is it written as a narrative? Again, level 1 would be, no, it's really not. They wrote a how-to paper instead, or they wrote a persuasive paper instead. A level 2 is, yeah, it's written as a narrative. It's not super responsive to the prompt, but I can see it. A level 3 is, it is a narrative, and it does respond to the prompt. And then a level 4 is like, yes, it answers every single thing in the prompt, and it's very purposeful when it does so. That's the similar thought pattern you should take for each of the indicators. You'll see that some of the language that's used in here can be a little bit like, okay, what's the difference between only somewhat suited and adequately suited? Typically, if you're in between two indicators, let's say you're like, man, I don't know if this is a 2 or I don't know if this is a 3, it's usually safer to opt for the lower of the two scores unless you're absolutely sure, as this is the way that scholars are tested on their fourth grade writing star. So the next row is it organized in the beginning, middle, and end? Are the details on topic? And is there a flow sentence to sentence? Again, asking yourself these questions and really trying to see some of the bolded words in here. So for example, the difference between it's really weak versus it's inconsistent. So like there's a difference between, sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not good, and overall it's very poor. For these two up here, that's again, a level 4 is like exemplar, like the best of the best. So try to reserve those level 4s for not just, oh yeah, they're doing it, but like, is it super meaningful? Is it really strong? Is it very coherent? Do I have a really clear understanding of why this is so important? Once you go through organization, you'll have one overall score in AWARE for organization. So let's suppose you give them a 2, a 2, a 3, and a 3. You would average those up to a 3. If you have a 2, 2, 2, and a 3, you would average those down to a 2. And then if you have them where it's a 1, 2, 3, and a 3, you would again average those down to a 2. If you have any questions about how to rate these, then you can always ask the question on the discussion board. The next strand is around ideas, and this really has to do with, are there good details and is it interesting to read? Does the writer write something that is like really fun for me as a reader to read? So again, do the details contribute? This would basically be a no, and these are levels of yeses. And then is it engaging and interesting? This is usually a no. This is not really, but maybe there's a little bit of a realistic situation that could be interesting if given a little bit more development. The last, sorry, up here, let's suppose you're in between a 1 and a 2. Again, average those. If you're between a 2 and a 3, again, average. For the most part, scholars tend to be on the same level on both details and interesting and engaging, because if there are really strong details, it tends to make the paper a lot more interesting to read. The last strand is on use of language and conventions. This has to do with 3 things: word choice, sentences, and spelling, capitalization, punctuation usage. So it's not all punctuation, for example. So if they don't have a single period throughout the whole thing, that doesn't mean they automatically get a 1 for language and conventions. It just means that they don't have a good command of sentences, but their word choice may still be strong. So up here on this first one, word choice, this has to do with words that really help convey the meaning of the story and helps the reader really see what the writer is trying to tell them. You can see I really like these words: vague and limited, general or imprecise, specific and concrete, and then this is really what gets you a level 4, vivid and expressive, keen awareness of telling a story. As you go through these, this usually has to do with like the types of adjectives and adverbs, maybe figurative language, similes and metaphors that the scholar is using. For the second indicator for this strand, it has to do with sentence types. If the sentences are uncontrolled or they're really awkward or there's random periods, that would be a 1 for this one. Awkward sentences would get a 2, varied would get a 3, and then very purposeful, varied, well-controlled sentences get a 4. And then the last indicator has to do with those things we usually see right away in a paper: punctuation, spelling, capitalization. You can really read through. If there is no command and it's very disruptive, it would be a 1. For the most part, by 3rd grade, this isn't happening, but what you are possibly seeing is that there's enough things in it that are distracting errors that cause some minor disruptions, so it would be a level 2. Few, if any, disruptions gets a 3. And then in order to get a 4, the conventions really need to contribute to the effectiveness. That would be things like correctly using dialogue when somebody in the paper is saying something. That would be like correctly using an exclamation point to convey the experience a little bit better. So that's the rubric. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to post them on the discussion board. What I'd like to show you real quick is the sample response that you read earlier. What I've done is I've taken a moment to annotate it and write down what I would have scored this. So I wrote out the prompt right here: tell a story about learning something new. So in this story, it's a mom and possibly a daughter going to a cousin's birthday. The mom teaches her how to bake a cake. They followed the steps, what happened with the cake, taking it to the cousin's birthday party, and so on. So as you can see at the top, I wrote organization, ideas, and conventions for the 3 strands. And then down here I wrote some notes that you can read. I wrote out that for organization, it is a narrative, so it is written as a story. It is told in a sequence, like beginning, middle, and end, but there's really no paragraphs. There's some minor disruptions because it feels very choppy. And so for this, I gave it a level 2. So I didn't give it a level 3 because there's not really a good paragraph division, and that's causing some disruptions in it. But overall, it is a narrative. You can see clear beginning, middle, and end, and it has some flow even though it's choppy. So I did give it a level 2. For ideas, this has to do with the details. So there are some details that are really surface level about baking the cake, but they're still showing some of the writer's experience, just they're not very thoughtful. And at times, you can see down here, she talks about the party was a My Little Pony party. So it's not really on topic. So while some of the details were there and some of them weren't, I gave it a level 2. I wouldn't give it a level 3 or 4 unless every single detail in the story was about baking that cake. And then lastly, for conventions I felt at the beginning was a pretty big strong point. But what I noticed is that the word choice is really lacking specificity and it's not very descriptive. So I rated word choice really around a level 2. It's there's stuff about a cake. They never really, so we had fun. It was good. It's not very descriptive, but the author is trying to convey the party to the reader. The sentences are controlled, but they are awkward, again, very choppy. And then there's not a lot of disruptions because of spelling, but you can see a few, like right here, dropping the E, baking, and then because. Both of these are words that by 3rd grade we would expect scholars to know how to spell, so it does disrupt it more than normal. So I gave an overall level 2 for conventions. So if you have any questions about how to grade something or how to rate something, feel free to ask your question on the discussion board. You can upload and post a screenshot of maybe the paragraph that you're struggling with grading, or you can email me or the CTL Sarah directly. Thank you so much.